Admiral Gilday, I was glad to hear Congressman Lamborn ask you about your decision to include Ibram X. Kendi's How to Be an Anti-Racist in your recommended reading list. Kendi's book states that capitalism is essentially racist, and Kendi is clear that racism must be eliminated. So yes or no? Do you personally consider advocating for the destruction of American capitalism to be extremist?
Here's what I know, Congressman.
It's a yes or no question,
Racism in
Admiral.
the United States Navy.
Kendi stated that white people are a different breed of humans and are responsible for the AIDS virus. Yes or no, do you personally consider the conspiracy that white people started AIDS to be an extremist belief?
Sir, I'd have to understand the context.
That is a
these
simple
statements
question.
Are made. I'm not gonna.
Admiral, this is a book that you recommended every sailor in the United States Navy read.
Cherry-picked quotes from somebody's book. I'm not going to do that. This is a bigger issue than Kendi's book. What this is really about is trying to paint the United States military, and in this case, the United States Navy is weak, as woke. And we've had sailors that spent 341 days at sea last year with minimal port.
So if sailors accept Kendi's argument that America and the United States Navy are fundamentally racist, as you've encouraged them to do you expect that to increase or decrease morale and cohesion or even recruiting into the United States Navy?
I do know this. Our strength is in our diversity, and our sailors understand that. Racism in the United States is a very complex issue. What we benefit from is an open discussion about those issues, that we don't try to ignore it or rewrite it, but we actually have a discussion about each other in the United States.
Admiral, why did you put this book on the reading list and recommend it that every single United States sailor read it?
Because I think it's really important to consider a variety of views.
Admiral, you said you read this book. What part of this book is redeeming and qualifies as something that every sailor in the United States Navy should read it?
About his own journey as an African American in this country, what he's experienced.
Let me ask you again, Admiral, do you expect that after sailors read this book that says that the United States Navy is racist, that we will increase or decrease morale, cohesion, and recruiting rates into the United States Navy?
I think we'll be a better Navy from having open, honest conversations about racism.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Chairman, Mr. Secretary, why was Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Lohmeyer relieved of his command?
It was a decision made by his chain of command, and typically those decisions are made based upon either having confidence or a lack of confidence. This issue is under investigation by the IG, and so I won't comment any further on that.
In my previous discussions with service members and particularly officers, I would hear about complaints over parts not arriving on time, long deployments, and in my more recent discussions with those officers, the number one issue that they raised to me with concern, often unable to speak publicly for fear of the type of retribution that Lieutenant Colonel Lohmeyer faced, they say that your stand down regarding extremism did not help our military, it hurt the military. And I want to share with you that perspective, that it caused service members to otherize one another, it impaired group cohesion, and interesting to me is that I've heard those sentiments most frequently from units that are majority-minority, that this was not particularly helpful. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to maybe share with us more specificity regarding the definitions that seem to be a challenge when Ms. Hartzler was asking questions. How should the Department of Defense think about critical race theory?
Could I make a comment, Secretary? I'm sorry.
Well, I'm very limited on my time, General Milley.
Well, I just want to make a comment. The feedback
I know, but
I've gotten
I've asked the question to Secretary Austin.
I don't know what the issue of critical race theory is and what the relevance here with the department. We do not teach critical race theory. We don't embrace critical race theory, and I think that's a spurious conversation. And so we are focused on extremist behaviors, and not ideology, not people's thoughts, not people's political orientation, behaviors is what we're focused on. And one final point, and thanks for your anecdotal input, but I would say that I have gotten 10 times that amount of input, 50 times that amount of input on the other side that have said, hey, we're glad to have had the ability to have a conversation with ourselves and with our leadership. And that's what we need to make sure
again,
that
reclaiming that is not appropriate, and it is particularly concerning to me that you have hired a critical race theorist to give you advice on personnel matters, and that person is Bishop Garrison. And I would particularly observe that on July 27, 2019, Bishop Garrison tweeted regarding former President Trump, he's dragging a lot of bad actors out into the sunlight, normalizing their actions. And here's the relevant part. If you support the president, you support that. There is no room for nuance in this. There is no more, but I'm not like that talk. And then he replies to his own tweet with what seems to be a very ethno-nationalist hashtag, hashtag Black44. Could you enlighten us as to what advice Mr. Garrison has given you, and are you concerned that while you testify publicly to our committee that the department doesn't embrace critical race theory, you have hired someone who is precisely a critical race theorist?
First of all, on the issue of critical race theory, et cetera, I'll obviously have to get much smarter on whatever the theory is. But I do think it's important, actually, for those of us in uniform to be open-minded and be widely read. And the United States Military Academy is a university. And it is important that we train and we understand. And I want to understand white rage, and I'm white, and I want to understand it. So what is it that caused thousands of people to assault this building and try to overturn the Constitution of the United States of America? What caused that? I want to find that out. I want to maintain an open mind here, and I do want to analyze it. It's important that we understand that because our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians, they come from the American people. So it is important that the leaders, now and in the future, do understand it. I've read Mao Zedong. I've read Karl Marx. I've read Lenin. That doesn't make me a communist. So what is wrong with understanding, having some situational understanding about the country for which we are here to defend? And I personally find it offensive that we are accusing the United States military, our general officers, our commissioned, non-commissioned officers, of being, quote, woke or something else because we're studying some theories that are out there. That was started at Harvard Law School years ago, and it proposed that there were laws in the United States, antebellum laws prior to the Civil War, that led to a power differential with African Americans that were 3/4 of a human being when this country was formed. And then we had a Civil War and Emancipation Proclamation to change it. And we brought it up to the Civil Rights Act in 1964. It took another 100 years to change that. So look it, I do want to know. And I respect your service, and you and I are both Green Berets. But I want to know. And it matters to our military and the discipline and cohesion of this military.
Mr. Secretary, I found that very interesting, your exchange with Mr. Gates on no teachings of critical race theory in the United States military. I want to quote to you a letter I received from the superintendent of West Point. It says, with regards to critical race theory, there is one course that has this theory as part of the syllabus. There are 2 lessons on critical race theory. There is a book on critical race theory titled Critical Race Theory and Introduction. On and on and on about the teaching of critical race theory in West Point. I just want to emphasize something. This isn't something that we're raising. This came to me from cadets, from families, from soldiers, with their alarm and their concern at how divisive this type of teaching is that is rooted in Marxism. I can agree there, but the other thing that they raised to me was a seminar that over 100 cadets attended titled Understanding Whiteness and White Rage, taught by a woman who described the Republican Party platform as a platform of white supremacy. This is going on at West Point as we speak to our future military leaders. And sir, I would encourage you, I would demand that you get to the bottom of what is going on in the force, and further, for what it means for civilian oversight of the military when our future military leaders are being taught that the Constitution and the fundamental civilian institutions of this country are endemically racist, misogynist, and colonialist, and therefore it is their duty to resist them. What does that mean for a future cadet who one day will be sitting where you are? And so do you agree that Will you work with us do you agree that critical race theory should or should not be taught in our military academies?
As I said earlier, thanks, Congressman, for the question, and thanks for your continued support. Thanks for your service.
Thank you.
This is not something that the United States military is embracing and pushing and causing people to subscribe to. Now, whether or not this was some sort of critical examination of different theories, I don't know. But
we need to understand our past. I want to be very clear. But can you agree at least that understanding whiteness and white rage presented in Ike Hall over 100 cadets probably is something that we shouldn't be teaching our future leaders of the United States Army?
In diversity training. I want to share just a small selection of what your own troops are saying. And Mr. Chairman, I have a longer list that I'd like to submit for the record.
Without objection.
Again, this is just a few examples. One Marine told us that a military history training session was replaced with mandatory training on police brutality, white privilege, and systemic racism. He reported that several officers are now leaving his unit, citing that training. Another service member told us that their unit was required to read White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo, which claims, and this is a quote, "White people raised in Western society are conditioned into a white supremacist worldview." A member of the Special Operations community has told us that they are being instructed that, quote, "The U.S. Special Operations community is racist." One Army officer relayed to us the words of his general officer who told him that the entire U.S. Army is racist. A midshipman at the Naval Academy said classmates are calling America a fundamentally racist place and that this sentiment is not contested by school administrators. An airman told us their unit was forced into a racist exercise called a privilege walk, where members of the wing were ordered to separate themselves by race and gender in order to stratify people based on their perceived privilege. One African-American officer disparagingly said, and I quote, "The Navy thinks my only value is as a black woman and not the fact that she is a highly trained military specialist." Soldiers have come forward to tell us they are being forced to watch videos about systemic racism and documentaries that rewrite America's history as a fundamentally racist and evil nation. One Space Force officer told me that 2 Guardians left his ranks in a short period of time. One was a young African American who said that after the training, she would never have joined the military had she known that it was such a hotbed of racism. The other was a white airman who said he didn't sign up to be indoctrinated and filed separation paperwork. Mr. Secretary, we're hearing reports of plummeting morale, growing mistrust between the races and sexes where none existed just 6 months ago, and unexpected retirements and separations based on these trainings alone. And again, these are not my words, these are the words of your own troops. So I want to ask a few simple but vital questions. Mr. Secretary, do you believe that our military is a fundamentally racist organization? Yes or no, please?
Well, I won't give you a yes or no answer on that, Senator, because it deserves more than a yes or no. The military, like any organization, will have its challenges, but I do not believe it is a fundamentally racist organization.
Thank you. I'm sorry to cut you off, but our time is limited. I think it is a pretty simple question. I'm glad that you agree it is not fundamentally racist. Do you believe that any member of the military should be treated differently based on their skin color and sex? Again, yes or no will do.
Again, this question deserves more than a yes or no answer. It is.
人民军队的力量来自改革创新，人民军队的胜利来自改革创新。
祖国召唤，我必到。我有战，我必回。
With a little girl raised by 2 moms. Took ballet, played violin. I also marched for equality. I like to think I've been defending freedom from an early age. And maybe shatter some stereotypes along the way. I'm U.S. Army Corporal Emma Malone Lord, and I answered my calling.
Our strength is in our diversity.